U.S.-Canada trade relations at crossroads amid mounting tariff threats. By CBC News Desk, July 2025. As the deadline for potential U.S. tariffs inches closer, Canada and the United States are locked in high-pressure negotiations that could reshape the economic future of both countries. Canadian officials, including Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, have described the talks as intense, signaling just how much is on the line. With the U.S. demanding new terms on automotive exports, dairy access, and rules of origin, both sides are bracing for impact if no deal is struck in time. This moment marks another chapter in the evolving trade relationship between the two countries that are not just geographic neighbors but deeply interconnected economic partners. Yet, growing tensions over tariffs and market access reflect a broader shift in global trade dynamics and internal political pressures in both capitals. Background. From NAFTA to the USMCA, and now. The Canada-US trade relationship has long been shaped by large multilateral agreements. NAFTA, signed in the early 1990s, was the original foundation for integrated trade across North America. It helped streamline tariffs, align supply chains, and deepen economic cooperation. However, under former U.S. President Donald Trump, NAFTA was renegotiated and replaced by the U.S.-Mexico-Canada Agreement, USMCA, in 2020. While the USMCA preserved many core elements of NAFTA, it added stricter rules for automotive content, labor rights, and digital trade. Even with these revisions, friction points remained, many of which have now resurfaced in the 2025 negotiations. Tariff deadline pressures. What's at stake? At the center of the current talks is a looming deadline set by the U.S. for imposing new tariffs on Canadian imports. These tariffs would primarily target the automotive industry, steel, aluminum, and potentially dairy. The Biden administration, or its current successor, is reportedly considering the move as a way to protect U.S. jobs and manufacturing from perceived imbalances in trade. Canadian officials argue that such tariffs would be not only economically harmful but also unjustified under current trade rules. With the clock ticking, the urgency is palpable. Sectors potentially impacted. Automotive. Canadian parts plants are tightly linked with U.S. automakers. Steel and aluminum. Ontario and Quebec industries could face massive cost hikes and job losses. Agriculture. U.S. demands for more access to Canada's protected dairy sector are politically sensitive. Key flashpoints in the negotiations. 1. Automotive rules of origin. The U.S. wants stricter rules about what percentage of a vehicle must be made in America to qualify for duty-free trade under the USMCA. Canada argues that its components are already well integrated and that further restrictions would hurt both countries. 2. Dairy market access. The U.S. is asking for greater access to Canada's dairy market, which is protected under a supply management system involving quotas and high tariffs. Canadian dairy farmers, particularly in Quebec, are vehemently opposed. 3. Steel and aluminum tariffs. Reinstating tariffs on steel and aluminum would hit Canada hard, especially in regions like Hamilton, Ontario. This sector was previously targeted by Trump's administration but had gained relief under the USMCA. Canada's position. Protecting workers and sovereignty. Prime Minister Trudeau and Foreign Minister Mélanie Joly have remained steadfast in resisting American pressure. In public remarks, Trudeau said, "We're not going to accept a deal that undermines our workers or our economic sovereignty." Behind closed doors, Canadian negotiators are trying to walk a fine line, protecting key sectors while avoiding economic retaliation. The Canadian government has also warned it could impose counter tariffs if provoked, potentially targeting U.S. exports like wine, motorcycles, or agricultural goods. U.S. strategy. Balancing jobs and international commitments. The American side is motivated by internal economic and political considerations. Rust Belt states and labor unions have been pressuring Washington to secure a better deal for American workers. With upcoming midterm elections on the horizon, maintaining a strong posture on trade plays well politically. That said, large U.S. businesses, particularly in the auto industry, are concerned about the risks of escalation. A trade war could damage their supply chains, increase costs, and create long-term instability. Industry and business response. Canadian industries have been vocal in their concerns. The Canadian Chamber of Commerce issued a statement urging compromise and emphasizing the risk of economic shock if talks fail. In the automotive sector, manufacturers fear disruptions that could lead to layoffs and plant shutdowns. A modern car crosses the border multiple times before it reaches the showroom, said one industry representative. Any barrier threatens the entire ecosystem. Dairy groups have also mobilized, arguing that Canadian farmers should not be sacrificed in exchange for a short-term trade fix. They warn that opening the market could destroy family farms and regional economies. Political fallout and domestic ramifications. The negotiations are politically risky for the Trudeau government. With elections scheduled for next year, mishandling trade could damage their standing in key provinces. The opposition Conservative Party is already using the issue to paint the Liberals as ineffective on international matters. Meanwhile, in the U.S., Democrats and Republicans alike are framing trade as a national security issue. This rhetoric allows leaders to justify tough actions but also raises the stakes for diplomacy. International implications. Beyond bilateral impacts, this trade dispute is being watched closely around the world. If tariffs are imposed, it could signal a return to aggressive protectionism by the U.S., a message that would ripple across Europe and Asia. Countries like China and India may see this as an opportunity to deepen ties with Canada. Canada, in turn, has already been exploring diversification, signing recent trade agreements with the UK, the EU, and Pacific Rim nations. The fate of U.S.-Canada relations could therefore influence Canada's long-term strategy and reduce its economic dependence on its southern neighbor. What happens next? Negotiators are racing to meet the deadline. 3 potential outcomes are emerging. Full agreement. A revised deal is struck, removing the tariff threat entirely. Temporary extension. Both sides agree to keep talking, freezing tariffs for now. Breakdown and escalation. Tariffs go into effect, and Canada retaliates. While the first scenario is the most desirable, most analysts believe the second is more likely, an uneasy pause while both countries prepare for further talks later in the year. Conclusion. The road ahead. Canada and the U.S. find themselves at a defining moment in their economic relationship. While the two nations have a long history of cooperation, changing political winds and economic realities are testing those bonds. The days ahead will show whether diplomacy and mutual interest can prevail over short-term political gains and economic nationalism. One thing is certain. The outcome will shape North American trade for years to come.